Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello dear friends, welcome to Spiritism and the Media here on Kardec Radio. Today I brought a text from a book that has not been translated into English yet. I hope it will be translated soon, as we have many books by Chico Xavier who has not been translated. This is one of them. The name of this book is Falando à Terra, or Speaking to the Earth. And it was channeled by Francisco Xavier, and there are many spirit authors in this book. One of them is Emmanuel, and the text that I brought is from Emmanuel. So the reason I brought this text is because here Emmanuel is comparing the writers and talking about the importance of the writers in our life, but at the same time he's asking us to be aware of them and to understand, to know how to recognize the good writers and the bad writers. So he's doing that by comparing the writers to trees. So let's see what Emmanuel says here. In the field of life, writers resemble trees. Not rarely we face vigorous and upright trunks that please us for their entirety, although they do not offer any advantage to the traveler. They may be tall but have no comforting branches. They may show their beauty, but they do not feed. They may have colorful flowers, however, they do not bear fruit. So he's talking about those trees that we may find in our path, that even though they seem beautiful, many times we are impressed by their beauty, but when we get closer, we see that those trees are not useful, because there will be no shadow for us to rest on that tree. There will be no fruits for us or for the animals. The birds will have no branches for them to build their nest. So even though it is a beautiful tree, it's not useful. Many times it's like the comparison that we have when we are talking about books, that saying that we cannot judge the book by the cover, because we may have a beautiful cover, but when we go inside and we actually read the book, it's not going to be a very good book. So it's like of that comparison that Emmanuel is bringing here for us. And he says that those trees, are the artists that write to themselves, lost in transcendent soliloquies or personal interpretations inaccessible to the common interest. So he's saying here that they are writers that they talk about themselves, their own opinion, their own life, their own world, without sharing that with others, without, for example, seeing that it's going to be useful to others or not, if it's going to add something to the life of the readers. So he's asking us to be aware of that, to see as the same that happens to the tree, we can see with the writers. Many times we may see that someone is a very good writer, we may think that, but when we get closer, when we analyze the texts, we are going to see that they are not useful for us. And he says here, oftentimes we see hawthorns. They are green and attractive by far. However, they send stinging thorns to the ones who share their deceitful intimacy. So again, one thing is seeing it by far, another thing is taking a closer look to it. And how do we take a closer look to the texts that we read? It's by analyzing that. It's the same advice that Kardec brings to us if we go to the Medium's book, the last chapter of the book, when Kardec is talking about the communications that we receive from the spiritual world, and he is explaining to us how we can see if a communication is good or bad. The best way is to analyze that, no matter if it is written by a famous author, by a famous spirit, because we know they can deceive us. We may have like some mocking spirits who are trying to deceive us, so they may use the name of other spirits, thinking that we may believe in what they are writing just because we see that famous name in there. So we need to analyze everything that we read. And Emmanuel says, they are the intellectuals who convert the rays of intelligence into ideological poison of cruel social theories, or poison literature with which they favor passionate crimes and demeaning lies. So they can use that, they can deceive us, so we may think the way they want us to think. They may lead us to follow the path that they want to, and not the one that is going to be the best for us. So it's very important when you do that. And why I wanted to bring it to us, because we can use those advice when we are reading a book, when we are reading a magazine, a newspaper, an article online, when we are going to the Facebook and reading some posts, any kind of reading that we have in our lives, we need to analyze. We need to take a closer look before we go and we trust what we are reading. Because we know that out there are many people that want us to follow the wrong path. There are many fake news today. What are the fake news? The fake news are those news that seems like a real one, but they are actually deceiving us and making us believing something that is not true. So that's a good advice for us, especially today in the world we live now. And Manuel continues, at last we find the benefactors of the vegetable world who produce goods for the collective. They are admired by the arms that embrace the nests, by the shadow that protects the spring, and by the fruits that nourish the soil, the worms, the animals, and the man. So here he's talking about the good writers. The same way that we have the good trees that produce good fruits, that have the shadow for us to rest, we have the good writers, the ones that are going to nourish us with elevated thoughts, elevated knowledge, with the knowledge that we need in our daily lives. And he says, those are the writers that really work for the others, forgetting the self, integrated in the general process. They maintain the souls, transforming them and producing ideals of sanctification and betterment, which helps humanity and improves the planet. And now Emmanuel talked about this book. He says this book has branches from those fruit trees. The authors here, talking to the earth, stimulate the human heart to the sowing of new life. It is the friendly voice of soul sisters who come back from the glowing peaks of immortality, awakening companions who fell asleep in the glooming valley. So now he's talking about the author, the spirit authors that bring this message to us in this book. And not only in this book, we can apply to all the other books by Francisco Cândido Xavier and by other mediums, serious mediums that we know they channel those spirits that are really here to share the good news with us, to share this knowledge with us in order for us to evolve. And he says those souls, they are souls that help and console, animate and enlighten, there is no doubt. Notwithstanding the merit of what they express, many people will go on sleepwalking and numb. So many times, even though we may read those books, we may access the knowledge, many times we are not going to process that knowledge right away. We're still going like as we are not understanding what's happening, but slowly we are going to get it. We're going to understand the teachings that they are bringing us, the teachings that Jesus brought to us 2,000 years ago. We're still trying to understand, we're still studying that because we are still in this process of evolution. And he says that's because the awakening varies infinitely. The gazelle opened its eyes to the bird's song. The stone, however, only wakes up to dynamite explosions. We are left, however, with the comforting certainty that if there are millions of souls anesthetized in the deceptions of the flesh, we already have in the world thousands of companions who have ears to hear. So the good news is that if we have ears to hear, we have the knowledge to hear. So we have access to those books. And for us to finish this lesson, I'm bringing one of those books, that is The Happy Life, as usual, channeled by Divaldo Pereira Franco, by the spirit Joana de Angelis. I'm opening it randomly so we can finish the show today with another uplifting message. So it's number 31. Become a peacemaker. Wherever you may be, encourage peace and live in peace. The tumults which affect man and the struggles unleashed everywhere can be avoided if men maintain a spirit of goodwill to each other. An offense not spoken, an attack apologized for, a blow averted, avoid conflicts which may simmer into flames of hatred. Believe in the power of nonviolence, and peace will garland your heart and the hearts of all who come near you. Thank you so much for your company. May God be with all of us, and see you next week.